Hi, this is Mr. Williamson, and this video is about mixtures. First, I would suggest you take notes. You can get extra credit for them if you turn them on the day of the test. Make sure you look at your study guide, see if we are answering any questions that we're going to be talking about on the study guide. And finally, make sure you ask questions in class. I'll be glad to answer anything you don't understand. So let's get started. First of all, you need to know the review. You need to know about matter, the three states of matter: a gas, a liquid, and a solid. Make sure you know the characteristics of them. Atoms, you should know the parts, the protons, the electrons, and the neutrons. That's an N. Ions and those isotopes. An ion is lost or gained an electron. An isotope is lost or gained a neutron. Covalent bonds are bonds, molecules, two or more molecules held together with by electron sharing. Make sure you review that. And ionic bonds are two or more molecules held together with the donation of electrons. So make sure you understand those. And then finally, hydrogen bonds are bonds between two molecules or atoms, or molecules mostly, that are held together by or attracted by the polar effects of the molecule, the plus or the minus. Make sure you understand those. If you don't, go back to the video and the appropriate videos and take a look. So we're talking about mixtures. There are four different types of mixtures, and you need to understand them. They're very simple. They have a couple properties and some value in biology. And the mixtures that we're talking about are compounds, molecules, solutions, and suspensions. And we're going to talk about each of those, obviously, in turn. Hopefully this is a quick video you get something out of, and you'll understand it. Again, ask questions at the end. Compounds are two or more molecules, so greater than two or equal to two atoms, held together with ionic bonds. With ionic bonds. Again, remember what an ionic bond is real quickly. You have the nucleus. Say this is sodium, so it'd be Na. You have two electrons in the outermost shell. You have 8 in the next one. And then you have 1 in the outermost shell. Well, it's not happy. It wants 8 in the outermost shell or none. So if we can get rid of that, it's going to be real happy. Chlorine is the same thing, except it has a few more electrons. 2 in the innermost shell. It has 8 on the outermost shell. And then on the second shell, on the outermost shell, it actually has only 7. And it wants 1 more here. Well, if we take this one and put it there, this becomes a positive charged atom. This becomes a negative charge atom because we've lost an electron over here, we've gained an electron over there, and the attraction of the two molecules between the two atoms, it pulls them together. It's an ionic bond. It's a weak bond. It can be broken down very simple. Great example of what I just drew there, and this is salt. That salt is a compound held together with ionic bonds. The next mixture we're going to talk about are molecules. Molecules are two or more atoms held together with covalent bonds. So they're molecules where the atoms are sharing the electrons. You can see here that we have water. Basically, this is H2O, and we have two hydrogen atoms, H2. The original hydrogen has 1 electron, and this one has 1 electron. It wants 1 more. It wants 2 in the outermost shell because it only has the inner shell. And so by sharing it with oxygen, sharing 1 here and sharing 1 here, this hydrogen thinks it has 2. This hydrogen thinks it has 2. Meanwhile, the oxygen thinks it has 8 in the outermost shell. So it's held together, and they share these electrons, covalent bonds. All right, and those are what molecules are made out of. And most molecules, almost everything we deal with in life, are made of molecules. the screen you're looking at, your clothes, the desks we sit at school, most all the air, the gases in the air, almost all liquids. Pretty much what we're talking about is a molecule, and again, we're talking about a covalent bond. Atoms, two or more atoms held together with a covalent bond. The third mixture is a solution. A solution is a mixture where you have a uniform mixture of one substance inside of another, mixed inside of another. And here we have a couple things we need to know. We have the solute is the substance that's being dissolved. We have the solvent is what we're mixing it in. So this could be here. This could be say salt, NaCl. We just talked about the ionic bonds. This would be water maybe. And when we put the salt into the water, the salt dissolves and is uniformly mixed up. In other words, you don't have one area over here that has no salt, and you have another area over here that has a whole lot of salt. You have them basically that's equally mixed. It's all mixed in equally among the things. Salt water is a great example. There's a whole bunch of examples down below that most of the drinks we drink, almost all sodas are solutions. Salt water is a solution. Sugar water is a solution. If it's a uniform, Kool-Aid is a great example. Usually the example that's given in a lot of science classes, because you mix the sugar and the coloring in the solution of water into water, make it a solution, and you have the drink. But almost all the liquids that we deal with in our regular life, almost all, are basically solutions. So, and the final one we're talking about is a suspension. A suspension is a mixture that settles over time. Okay, I'm giving you two examples here. One of them is salad dressing. That's probably the most common one we can think of. I'm not talking about the oil and the vinegar or the oil and whatever. The oil always floats to the top, and the rest of the liquid is down here to the water or the vinegar or whatever. No, I'm talking actually about the solids. When you shake it up, all these things stir in, and they stir and mix in. But when we let it settle, all the particles settle out near the bottom, and maybe some of it in the middle or something, depending on their density. But it settles. Another example is this paint over here. That's why we stir up paint, or like in this case, we would use the stick, because the pigment settles to the bottom, and it's being carried by the liquid in the paint. So when you actually paint a wall, you're taking that liquid and you've mixed the paint in, and when you paint it on the wall, the liquid evaporates. The liquid evaporates, and what's left on the wall is the pigment, and that's the color that we leave, or whatever you're painting. But a suspension, again, is something that settles over time. Most things like mud puddles, things like that, are going to be suspensions, because they're going to settle over time. The dirt and the mud will settle out. So again, you need to know what a compound is, what a molecule is. Again, a compound is two or more atoms held together with ionic bonds. A molecule is two or more atoms held together with covalent bonds. A solution is a uniform mixture of one or more things, where the solute is the thing being dissolved, and the solvent is what we're dissolving it in, usually a liquid. Although you could have a solid type of solution. Say if you had sand and iron filings, then you mix them up equally real well. Then you would have it's not a liquid, but it would be a solution. Or maybe cinnamon sugar, where you can take some cinnamon and you mix it in with the sugar, and you get a uniformly distributed put it before you put it on things. So that solution, again, you need to know the difference between solute and the solvent, and think of some examples. And then finally you have suspensions, and that's where we mix them up, but after a while they tend to settle out, and the heavier things settle to the bottom. It could happen quickly, or it could happen kind of slowly, depending what the suspension is. So that's mixtures. I hope you got something out of it. If you didn't, go back and rewatch it, rewind it. Make sure you take a look at your notes. Again, look at the study guide. Make sure that that we've answered any questions, and you can answer the questions that pertain to this. And finally, if you have any questions, make sure you ask me in class. I'll be glad to answer them and address them for you. Hopefully you're studying for the test. Good luck.